Rain hammered the cracked asphalt of Highway 89 like bullets against armor. The kind of rain that doesn't fall in the desert often, but when it does, it comes with a vengeance. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the lonely stretch of road where civilization had almost given up. Almost, but not quite. There, defiant against the storm, stood a single building, Sunset Diner. Its neon sign flickered red, then gold, then red again, casting shadows that danced across the wet pavement like ghosts of travelers long gone. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed their eternal song. The smell of coffee, old grease, and apple pie hung in the air. Behind the counter stood a woman who looked like she'd been carved from the same stone as the desert itself. Weathered, unbreakable. Margaret Sullivan, Maggie to those who knew her, though these days not many did. 78 years old, but her hands didn't shake as she poured coffee into a chipped mug. Her eyes, though, those told a different story. They held the kind of sadness that comes from waiting. 40 years of waiting for a son who vanished, for answers that never came, for a miracle she refused to stop believing in. The bell above the door chimed. Maggie didn't look up at first, just another traveler seeking shelter from the storm. She'd seen thousands over the decades. They came, they ate, they left. The highway swallowed them whole and she never saw them again. But then she heard it, the rumble, not thunder, something else, something that made her breath catch in her throat. Motorcycles, 8 of them rolling in from the darkness like mechanical beasts. Harley Davidsons, the real ones. Heritage classics with engines that sounded like war drums. Their headlights cut through the rain, and as they pulled into the gravel parking lot, Maggie's hand finally trembled. The coffee mug slipped, crashed against the floor. Brown liquid spread across the linoleum like spilled blood, because she knew what those bikes meant, what men who rode them were capable of. Her husband, Officer David Sullivan, had told her stories before he died. Stories about motorcycle clubs, about violence hidden behind Brotherhood, about men who answered to no law but their own. And now 8 of them were walking toward her door. The first man through the door was the kind that filled a room without trying. 6'2", maybe 220 pounds of muscle and leather. His jacket bore the unmistakable patch, Hell's Angels, Phoenix chapter. But it was the rocker on top that made Maggie's blood run cold. President Silas Reaper Mackenzie, 58 years old. Face like carved granite, weathered by sun and sand and things he'd never speak about. Gray beard close cropped. Eyes the color of storm clouds, the kind that held lightning inside them waiting to strike. He moved with the precision of a man who'd spent his life in dangerous places. Each step deliberate, measured. His right hand hung loose at his side, but Maggie noticed how his fingers twitched near his belt. Old habits, soldier habits. Behind him came 7 more. Different sizes, different ages, but all carrying the same aura. Men who'd seen things, done things, survived things. Silas stopped 3 feet from the counter, far enough to not threaten, close enough to be heard over the rain hammering the roof. "Ma'am," his voice was gravel and whiskey. "Place open." Maggie wanted to say no, wanted to point to the door and tell them to leave. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he stood, weight on his back foot, hands visible, non-threatening. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his eyes. The kind that comes from riding through a storm because stopping wasn't an option. Or maybe it was something else, something she couldn't quite name. "Counter or booth," she heard herself say. Silas glanced at his men. A silent communication passed between them. The kind born from years of riding together, living together, fighting together. "Booths, if that's all right." He paused. "We'll be quiet. Just need coffee and whatever you got that's hot." One of the men, massive, with a gray beard down to his chest, stepped forward. "And pie if you got it. Old Declan here's been talking about pie for the last 100 miles. Declan, Maggie filed the name away. This one was older than the rest. Maybe 62, 63. Irish accent buried under decades of American roads. But his eyes sharp as broken glass. This one missed nothing. "Apple pie," Maggie said, surprising herself. "Made it fresh this morning." Silas nodded, gestured to his men. They moved to the booths at the back, all except Silas and Declan, who took the booth nearest the door. Maggie noticed that too. Silas sat with his back to the wall, eyes on the entrance, the windows, the emergency exit near the kitchen. Soldier habits, or something else. She brought coffee first. 8 mugs on a tray, her hands barely held steady. When she placed the first cup in front of Silas, he looked up. Their eyes met, and something happened that Maggie couldn't explain. Wouldn't even try to explain if someone asked. A flicker of recognition, like seeing a face in a crowd you swear you know but can't quite place. It passed so quickly she thought she'd imagined it. "Thank you, ma'am." Silas wrapped his hands around the mug. Big hands, scarred knuckles, a faded tattoo on his right wrist barely visible beneath the leather jacket cuff. Maggie's throat went dry. "You boys been riding long. Phoenix to Flagstaff. Had to take it slow in this weather." He took a sip, closed his eyes briefly. "Good coffee. Been making it 42 years. You learn a thing or two." Silas opened his eyes again. This time he really looked at her, not just seeing her looking, the way a man looks when he's trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't have all its pieces. 42 years. That's a long time to be anywhere. "It's home," Maggie said simply, "or as close as I got to one anymore." Something shifted in Silas's expression. Just for a second. Like she'd said something that struck a chord he didn't know he had. Before he could respond, Declan cleared his throat. "The pie, love. Don't suppose we could trouble you for that?" Maggie nodded, turned toward the kitchen. But as she walked away, she felt Silas's eyes on her back. Felt them like a weight, like a question being asked without words. In the kitchen, she braced herself against the counter, her heart hammered in her chest. Ridiculous. She was 78 years old, too old for her body to betray her like this, too old for her hands to shake because of a stranger's eyes. Except they weren't shaking because she was afraid. They were shaking because of the way he'd ordered his coffee. Black, no sugar, and the way he'd sat down, and the way he'd tilted his head when he listened. Small things, meaningless things, things that reminded her of Ezra, her son, gone 40 years, taken from her when he was just 18, swallowed by fire and lies in a system that declared him dead without ever finding a body. But a mother knows, deep in her bones, in the marrow, in the place where life is created and carried and brought into the world. A mother knows when her child is still breathing. Somewhere. Somehow. Maggie had spent 40 years knowing. She cut 8 slices of apple pie. Extra cinnamon, just like Ezra used to like it. She didn't even realize she was doing it until the plates were ready. When she brought them out, Silas was staring at his coffee like it held answers to questions he'd never asked. She placed the plate in front of him. "Apple pie. Extra cinnamon." Silas looked up sharply. "How'd you know?" "Know what?" "That I like extra cinnamon." The words hung between them. Maggie's pulse thundered in her ears. Lucky guess, she managed. But it wasn't. And somehow they both knew it. Silas picked up his fork, cut a piece, brought it to his mouth, chewed slowly, and then he stopped. Completely still. The fork still in his hand, suspended in midair. "You all right?" Declan asked. Silas didn't answer. His eyes had gone distant, unfocused, like a man staring at something only he could see. "Prez," another voice, concerned now. Silas blinked, set the fork down. "Yeah, I'm good. Just reminded me of something." "Of what?" "Don't know, can't remember." He said it like it was true, like there were things in his head that existed as shadows. Shapes without substance. Memories that weren't quite memories. Maggie knew that feeling. She'd lived with ghosts for 40 years. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it had gotten worse. The windows rattled in their frames. The wind howled like something alive and angry. Silas and his men had finished their pie, finished their coffee, but they hadn't left. Something kept them there. Maybe the storm. Maybe something else. Maggie refilled cups without being asked, moved between tables like she'd done 10,000 times before. Routine, muscle memory, the kind of work that let your mind wander while your body knew what to do. She was pouring Silas's 4th cup when the bell above the door chimed again. This time, everyone went still. 5 men walked in, but they weren't like Silas and his crew. These men wore suits, expensive ones, tailored, the kind that cost more than most people made in a month. They moved like sharks, smooth, predatory, absolutely certain of their place at the top of the food chain. The man in front was maybe 54, tall, silver hair slicked back, a smile that never reached his eyes. He looked around the diner like he was evaluating property. Calculating worth. Vincent Carver. Maggie's blood turned to ice. She knew this man, not personally, but she'd seen his commercials, his billboards. Carver Mining Corporation, one of the biggest operations in Arizona. Copper, silver, rare earth metals, billions of dollars, power, influence. The kind of man who got what he wanted because no one was stupid enough to tell him no. "Mrs. Sullivan?" Carver's voice was smooth, practiced. The voice of a man used to getting his way without ever raising it. "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" It's pouring rain, Mr. Carver. A matter of perspective, he smiled, gestured to one of his men, who pulled out a folder. I won't take much of your time. I know you're busy. He glanced at Silas and the Hells Angels. His smile widened. Not friendly, amused. Interesting clientele you've got tonight. Silas didn't move, didn't respond, just watched. The way a wolf watches. Patient, waiting. Carver turned his attention back to Maggie. I'll get straight to the point. My company has been conducting surveys in this area. Turns out the land you're sitting on has significant mineral deposits. Copper, possibly more. He slid the folder across the counter. I'm prepared to offer you $4.2 million, cash. You can retire, move somewhere nice, somewhere that doesn't require you to work 70-hour weeks at 78 years old. Maggie didn't touch the folder. Not interested. Mrs. Sullivan. I said no. Carver's smile thinned. You haven't even looked at the offer. Don't need to. This diner belonged to my husband. He built it with his own hands. We raised our son here. This is all I have left of them. It's not for sale, not for $4 million, not for $40 million. Something flickered across Carver's face. Annoyance, maybe anger. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that practiced smile. I understand. Sentimental value. I respect that. He pulled a business card from his pocket, set it on the counter. But things change. People change their minds. When you do call me, the offer stands for 48 hours. He turned to leave. Stopped. Looked back at Maggie. 48 hours, Mrs. Sullivan. After that, well, opportunities like this don't come twice. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. But the weight behind the words was unmistakable. Carver and his men left. The door closed behind them. The rain swallowed the sound of their Mercedes pulling away. Maggie stood frozen. The business card seemed to burn on the counter. Ma'am, she looked up. Silas had risen from his booth, stood a respectful distance away, but his eyes had changed. The exhaustion was gone. Now they held something else. Focus, purpose. The eyes of a man who recognized danger when he saw it. You know that man, Silas asked. Only by reputation. What kind of reputation? The kind that gets what it wants, one way or another. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, how long you been running this place alone? 15 years, since my husband passed. Family nearby. Maggie's throat tightened. No family. It was the truth. And it wasn't. Because somewhere out there she believed with every fiber of her being Ezra was alive. But she couldn't say that. Couldn't explain it to a stranger. Couldn't put into words the certainty that lived in her bones. Silas seemed to read something in her silence. He glanced at Declan, at the other men, another one of those wordless communications. We'll stick around tonight, Silas said, just to make sure everything's quiet. You don't have to do that. No, ma'am, we don't, but we're going to anyway. Maggie opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't pity. It wasn't even kindness exactly. It was something simpler, more fundamental. This was a man who didn't walk away when someone needed help. Even if they were a stranger, even if it wasn't his fight. I don't have money to pay you, she said quietly. Didn't ask for money. Just point me to where we can park the bikes under cover, and maybe another pot of coffee. Maggie felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, opening like a door that had been locked for 40 years. There's a garage out back. Hasn't been used in a while, but it's dry. That'll do. Silas turned to his men. Knox, Garrett, take first watch. 2-hour shifts. Stay sharp. They nodded, rose from their booths, moved like soldiers, because that's what some of them were, or had been. The war leaves marks, visible and invisible. Silas carried both. The diner was quiet now, just Silas, Declan, and Maggie. The others were outside, watching, waiting. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, the kind that whispers instead of screams. Maggie made fresh coffee, set a cup in front of Silas. He'd taken off his leather jacket. Underneath, he wore a black t-shirt, faded, well-worn, and on his right forearm she could see the edge of a tattoo. Numbers, coordinates maybe. She couldn't quite make them out. You don't have to stay up, Silas said. We got this. Can't sleep anyway. Haven't slept right in years. I know that feeling. Something in his voice made her look at him, really look. And she saw it then. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It went deeper, bone deep, soul deep. Bad dreams, she asked. Silas nodded slowly. Every night, same ones, have been for as long as I can remember. What do you dream about? He was quiet for so long and she thought he wouldn't answer. Then fire, smoke, screaming, and a woman's face. Can't ever see it clearly, but I hear her voice. She's calling a name. Maggie's pulse quickened. What name, Ezra? The cup in her hand slipped. Would have fallen if Silas hadn't caught it. His reflexes were lightning fast, inhuman almost. He set the cup down gently. You all right, ma'am? Maggie couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because Ezra wasn't a common name. It wasn't the kind of name you heard every day. It was old, biblical. The kind parents gave their children when they wanted them to stand apart. The kind of name she'd given her son. Ma'am, she forced herself to breathe. Sorry, just that name. It was my son's name. Ezra. Silas went very still, the kind of still that predators achieve right before they strike, or right before they flee. His voice had changed, harder, guarded. He disappeared 40 years ago when he was 18. Disappeared, how? There was a fire at a psychiatric hospital in Phoenix. They said he was there, said he died in the fire. But, her voice cracked. They never found his body, never found any proof. They just declared him dead and closed the case. Silas's jaw tightened. And you didn't believe them? No, I never did. A mother knows, in here. She pressed her hand to her chest. I've known for 40 years that my son is alive. Somewhere, I just don't know where. The silence that followed was suffocating. Declan had gone completely still, watching Silas with an intensity that bordered on alarming. Finally, Silas spoke. This son of yours, Ezra, what was he like? Smart, curious, loved motorcycles. Used to take apart engines just to see how they worked. He could fix anything, build anything. She smiled through tears that threatened to fall. He was going to join the army. Had it all planned out. And then he was just gone. Silas stood abruptly, walked to the window, stood there with his back to her hands in his pockets. I don't remember anything before I was 8 years old, he said quietly. Nothing. They told me I was in a fire, that my parents died, that I was the only survivor. They gave me a name, Silas Mackenzie, put me in foster care, and that was that. Maggie's world tilted. When was this? 1974. The same year Ezra disappeared. Where? Phoenix. Maggie stood, walked toward him. Her legs felt like they might give out any second. Silas, look at me. He turned slowly, and for the first time Maggie saw him. Really saw him. Not as a stranger, not as a biker, but as a man with gray at his temples where there used to be dark hair, with lines around his eyes from squinting in the sun, with scars visible and invisible that spoke of a hard life lived on the margins. But underneath all that, underneath the years and the pain and the distance, she saw her son. No, Silas said, backed away. No, I know what you're thinking, and you're wrong. I'm not. I can't be. How do you know? Because I'd remember my own mother. Not if they made you forget. The words hung in the air like smoke, like the very fire that had taken Ezra from her. Silas shook his head, but his hands were trembling. Maggie saw them, saw the cracks in his armor. I need some air. He grabbed his jacket, pushed through the door into the rain, let it close behind him. Maggie stood frozen. Declan rose from his seat, walked over to her. His face was grave. How old was your son when he disappeared? Declan asked. 18. And he'd be, what now, 58? Declan nodded slowly, looked toward the door where Silas had vanished. Same age as our Prez. It's him, Maggie whispered. I know it's him. Maybe, maybe not. But I'll tell you this, love. I've known Silas Mackenzie for 15 years, rode with him, fought beside him, and in all that time I've never seen him react to anything the way he just reacted to you. What do you mean, he's scared? And Silas doesn't scare easy. Silas stood in the parking lot, rain soaked through his shirt, ran down his face. He didn't care, couldn't feel it. All he could feel was the roaring in his head, the memories that weren't quite memories, shadows and shapes and sounds that didn't make sense. A woman's voice, calling his name, except it wasn't his name. It was Ezra. He pulled off his jacket, stared at the tattoo on his right forearm, the coordinates he'd gotten 10 years ago. He'd woken up from a dream with them burned into his mind, couldn't shake them. So he'd made them permanent, 33.4484 degrees north, 112.0740 degrees west. He'd never looked them up, never questioned why he had them, just accepted them as another piece of the puzzle that was his broken memory. Now standing in the rain, he pulled out his phone, typed the coordinates into Google Maps. The pin dropped, right on top of Sunset Diner. No, he breathed. No, no, no. But even as he said it, something inside him was waking up. Something that had been buried for 40 years. Something that remembered. Apple pie with extra cinnamon, the way the coffee tasted. Not because it was good, but because it tasted like home. The small scar behind his left ear. He'd always had it, never knew where it came from. And the woman's face in his dreams, blurry, indistinct. But when he looked at Maggie tonight, for just a second, the face in his dreams had come into focus. Silas sank to his knees in the gravel. Rain pounded his back. And for the first time in 40 years, he let himself ask the question he'd been running from his entire life. Who am I? The answer terrified him. Because if Maggie was right, if he really was Ezra Sullivan, then everything he thought he knew about himself was a lie. His name, his past, his entire identity, all of it, gone, stolen, erased. And he didn't know if he had the strength to face that truth. Inside the diner, Maggie stood at the window, watched Silas kneeling in the rain. Every instinct screamed at her to run to him, to hold him, to tell him it was going to be okay. But she didn't move, because she understood something fundamental about her son. If he really was her son, he was a man who needed to come to the truth on his own terms. She couldn't force it, couldn't rush it. All she could do was wait, the way she'd been waiting for 40 years. Behind her, Declan spoke quietly. What happened to your son, Mrs. Sullivan, the real story, not what the police told you? Maggie turned, looked at this grizzled old biker with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, and for the first time in 40 years, she told someone the whole truth. My son witnessed something, a kidnapping. He was 18, just graduated high school. He saw men take a little girl, 7 years old. He tried to stop them. They caught him instead. Her voice shook, but she pushed on. My husband was a police officer, David Sullivan. He started investigating, found connections to powerful people, people who didn't want to be found. 2 weeks later, they told us Ezra had a breakdown, put him in a psychiatric hospital, said he was delusional, dangerous. And your husband? He kept digging until they killed him, made it look like a traffic accident. 2 days after that, the hospital burned down. They said Ezra died in the fire, but I never believed it because they needed him gone, but not dead, not if they could use him. Declan's face had gone hard as stone. Use him how? I don't know, but I've spent 40 years wondering, 40 years looking at missing boys, at John Does, at men who appeared out of nowhere with no past. And now, she looked back out the window at Silas, still kneeling, still lost. Now my son just walked through my door, and he doesn't even know it's me. Silas stood, slowly, his knees protested. Everything protested, but he made himself move, made himself walk back to the diner. When he pushed through the door, Maggie and Declan were waiting. I need to know something, Silas said. His voice was raw, stripped bare. Your son, did he have any distinguishing marks? Scars, birthmarks. Maggie nodded. Tears streamed down her face. A small scar behind his left ear, from when he fell off his bike when he was 7, and a birthmark on his right shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. Silas closed his eyes, reached up, touched the scar behind his left ear. Then he turned around, pulled off his wet shirt. On his right shoulder blade, clear as day, was a birthmark, shaped exactly like a crescent moon. Maggie's knees gave out. Declan caught her, helped her into a chair. Ezra, she whispered. Silas turned back around. His face was a mask of pain and confusion and fear. My name is Silas Mackenzie. Your name is Ezra Sullivan. I don't remember being him. I know. Maggie stood, walked toward him, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. I know, but you're here now after 40 years. You found your way home. This isn't my home. But even as he said it, his eyes betrayed him, because something in him recognized this place, this woman, this truth he'd been running from his entire life. Maggie reached out, placed her hand on his cheek. He flinched, but didn't pull away. You are my son, she said, and I have waited 40 years to say that. I don't care what name you use. I don't care what you remember or don't remember. You are mine, and I am never letting you go again. Silas's breath hitched, and for just a second Maggie saw it. The boy he used to be. Scared, lone, lost. But then headlights flooded through the window. A car, black Mercedes, The same one from earlier. Carver's car. It parked right in front of the diner. The door opened, but it wasn't Carver who stepped out. It was three men, big, armed, and moving with military precision. Declan swore, but, Prez, we got company. Silas's entire demeanor changed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something cold, hard, dangerous. Get her to the back, he said. Silas. Now, Declan. The old Irishman didn't argue, grabbed Maggie, pulled her toward the kitchen. Silas walked to the door, stepped outside, faced the three armed men alone. Help you, gentlemen. The lead man smiled. Mr. Carver sends his regards. Says the old lady's time is up, and you boys need to move along. This doesn't concern you. Pretty sure it does now. That right? Yeah, see, I don't like it when people threaten old women. Call it a character flaw. The man's smile faded. You really want to do this, biker? There's three of us, one of you. Silas smiled then, and it was the most terrifying thing Maggie had ever seen. Even from the kitchen, watching through the pass-through window, she felt the cold radiating off him. You're right, Silas said. It's not fair. He cracked his knuckles. For you. The first man reached for his gun. He never made it. Silas moved like lightning, like violence personified. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds, and all three men were on the ground. Disarmed, disabled, but alive. Barely. Silas stood over them, not even breathing hard. Tell Carver this. You come at her again. You come at this diner again. And I won't be so nice next time. We clear. The men didn't answer, just scrambled to their car, drove off into the night. Silas stood there for a long moment, then turned, walked back into the diner. Maggie stared at him, at this man who moved like death, who fought like a demon, who protected like a guardian angel. Who are you? She whispered. Silas looked at her, and for the first time he answered honestly. I don't know, but I'm about to find out. Thunder rolled across the desert, and somewhere in the darkness, Vincent Carver made a phone call. We have a problem. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. What kind of problem? The old woman has protection, Hell's Angels, and they're not backing down. Silence. I thought, then is it him? I don't know, maybe. Find out, because if Ezra Sullivan is still alive, if he remembers anything, I know. Then you know what needs to be done. Finish this. Tonight, if possible. Tomorrow at the latest. The line went dead. Carver stared at his phone, then made another call. Get me the team. The real one. Full tactical. I don't care what it costs. He hung up, smiled, because 40 years ago he'd helped his father bury a secret that had made them billions, a secret that required Ezra Sullivan to disappear. And now all these years later, the past had just walked through the door of a desert diner. But Vincent Carver hadn't built an empire by being careless. If Ezra Sullivan needed to disappear again, this time he'd make sure there was a body. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. Silas didn't care. He sat at the counter staring at a photograph Maggie had placed in front of him with trembling hands. A boy, 18 years old, dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that held fire and innocence in equal measure, wearing a leather jacket, standing next to a motorcycle, a Harley Sportster, 1984 model. The boy was smiling. Silas touched the edge of the photograph. His hand shook. Because he knew that jacket, knew it the way you know your own skin, could feel the weight of it on his shoulders, could smell the leather, could remember. No, he couldn't remember. That was the problem, but something deep inside him screamed that he should. That was taken 2 weeks before he disappeared. Maggie's voice was barely a whisper. She stood beside him, close enough to touch, but not touching, giving him space. His 18th birthday. Your father bought him that bike. Spent 6 months restoring it. Silas looked up at her. What happened to it, the bike? I still have it, upstairs, in the garage out back. Couldn't bring myself to sell it, just like I couldn't sell this place, because I kept thinking. One day he'd come back, and he'd want it. The weight of 40 years of waiting pressed down on the room like a physical thing. Declan cleared his throat from his booth. Prez, we need to talk about what happens next. Those boys Carver sent, that was a warning. Next time won't be so polite. Silas set the photograph down, carefully, like it might shatter. I know. So what's the play? Good question. Silas had spent 25 years in the Hells Angels, had risen through the ranks on merit and blood, had earned the president patch because his brothers trusted him to make the hard calls, to see 3 moves ahead, to protect the club. But this wasn't club business. This was personal. And personal made you stupid, made you emotional, made you vulnerable. I need information, Silas said. Everything you can find on Silas Mackenzie. Birth certificate, foster records, hospital records from the fire. Everything. Declan nodded. I'll make some calls. Still got friends in low places. He paused. But Prez, if what Mrs. Sullivan says is true, if you really are her son, then someone went to a hell of a lot of trouble to make you disappear. Someone with resources, power, the kind of power that doesn't just go away. Vincent Carver. Maybe, or maybe he's just the face, could go higher, could go deeper. Maggie spoke up. My husband found connections. Before they killed him, he found names, bank accounts, real estate deals. It all led back to one family, the Carvers. Charles Carver, Silas said. The name felt like poison on his tongue. Vincent's father. Yes, he was the one David was investigating. Charles Carver ran half of Arizona's underground back then. Human trafficking, money laundering, drugs, guns, you name it. But he was smart, kept his hands clean, used proxies, shell companies. By the time David got close, they killed him. Made it look like he ran a red light, T-boned by a semi-truck. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. David died instantly. The truck driver disappeared, and 2 weeks later, the psychiatric hospital burned down. Convenient timing. Silas felt rage building in his chest, cold, controlled. The kind of rage that didn't explode. It calculated, it planned, it waited for the perfect moment to strike. Tell me about the kidnapping, the one Ezra witnessed. Maggie closed her eyes, opened them. A little girl, 7 years old, Isabella Martinez. Her father was Senator Rafael Martinez, one of the most powerful men in Arizona at the time. The name hit Silas like a freight train, because he knew that name. Everyone in Arizona knew that name. Senator Martinez, retired now, but still a legend. A man who'd spent 40 years in public service. A man known for his integrity, his compassion. A man who'd lost his daughter to kidnappers when she was 7 years old. The ransom had been paid. $5 million. But Isabella Martinez had never come home. Her body had never been found. Ezra saw them take her, Maggie continued. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Saw 3 men force her into a van outside a shopping mall. He tried to stop them, got the license plate, went to the police, and that's when everything went to hell. They grabbed him. Yes, put him in that hospital, said he was having delusions, that he was dangerous. David tried to get him out, but they had judges, doctors, everyone in their pocket, and then she stopped, couldn't continue. Silas finished for her. And then the fire. Maggie nodded. Declan leaned forward. So let me get this straight. Ezra witnesses a kidnapping, gets locked up, hospital burns down. Ezra disappears, and instead of a body, we get Silas Mackenzie, 8-year-old orphan with no memory and a convenient backstory. Someone rewired his brain, Maggie said. That's the only explanation. The drugs they were using back then in psychiatric hospitals, electroshock therapy, experimental treatments, they could have erased his memories, made him forget who he was. Silas stood abruptly, walked to the window, watched the rain streak down the glass like tears. Why not just kill me? His voice was hollow. Why go through all that trouble? Silence, Arthur. Then Declan spoke. Because dead martyrs are dangerous, but a living ghost, a boy with no memory, no identity, that's a weapon. That's control. Control for what? Don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. The old Irishman pulled out his phone, stepped outside, started making calls. Maggie approached Silas slowly, stood beside him at the window. When you were a boy, she said quietly, you used to stand at this exact window every night before bed. You'd look out at the highway and tell me you were going to ride across the whole country someday, see everything, go everywhere. Silas didn't respond, couldn't. You had dreams, Ezra, big dreams, and they took them from you. Took your name, your family, your entire life. But they couldn't take who you are, not really, because I see him in you, my son, the boy who stood up to bullies, who protected the weak, who never walked away when someone needed help. That's Silas Mackenzie, he said, not Ezra Sullivan. Is there really a difference? The question hung in the air. Before Silas could answer, Declan burst back through the door. His face was grim. We got a problem. What kind? The Hells Angels Phoenix chapter. The one you've been running for 3 years. What about it? It was founded in 1985, 1 year after Ezra Sullivan disappeared. I got records, articles of incorporation. The original founder was listed as John Smith, obviously fake, but I dug deeper, tracked the money, the property, the connections. Declan's jaw tightened. Every single founding member had ties to Charles Carver. Bank accounts, business deals, employment records. The whole chapter was built as a front. Silas felt the ground shift beneath him. No, that's not. We're legitimate. We're half and half Prez. Half the chapter is real brothers. Good men. But the other half, they report to Vincent Carver. Have been for years. And you, Declan's voice softened. You were brought into the club in '99, right after you got back from Desert Storm. Someone recommended you, vouched for you, made sure you got patched in. Who? Man named Eric Vaughn. He's dead now. Killed in a bar fight in 2003. But before he died, he was on Carver's payroll. The implications crashed over Silas like a tidal wave. His entire life, his identity, his brotherhood, all of it built on lies. They've been watching me, he said, for 25 years, making sure I never remembered. Looks that way. And now you're here, in this diner, with your mother, starting to remember, which means the window exploded. Glass shattered inward. Silas moved on instinct, grabbed Maggie, threw her to the ground, covered her body with his own. Gunfire erupted. Automatic weapons, multiple shooters. The diner's walls disintegrated under the onslaught. Declan dove behind the counter, pulled his pistol, returned fire blindly. How many? Silas shouted. 6, maybe more. Outside, Silas could hear his brothers, the real ones. Knox, Garrett, Byrne, Hammond, returning fire. The sound of Harley engines roaring to life. But they were outgunned, outmanned. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. Silas looked down at Maggie. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but not for herself, for him. The back door, he said. Go now. Not without you. Mom, please, hey. The words slipped out before he could stop it. Mom, not ma'am, not Mrs. Sullivan. Mom. Maggie's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, started crawling toward the kitchen. Silas pulled his own gun. A Colt 1911, had carried it since Desert Storm. Never thought he'd have to use it on American soil. He was wrong. He rose up, fired 3 shots through the shattered window, heard a scream, 1 shooter down. But there were more. So many more. Declan, get her out of here. What about you? I'll hold them off, like hell. The old Irishman grabbed Maggie, pulling her toward the kitchen, but as they reached the door, it exploded inward. 2 men, tactical gear, night vision, professional killers. Declan fired first, dropped 1, but the second got a shot off. The bullet caught Declan in the chest. He went down hard. No, Silas roared. He fired, again and again, emptied his magazine into the second shooter. The man collapsed, but the damage was done. Silas rushed to Declan, pressed his hands against the wound. Blood poured between his fingers. Too much blood. Priest, stay with me. You hear me. Stay with me. Declan coughed, blood on his lips. Prez, listen. The club, half are traitors, but the other half. Another cough. They're your real brothers. Trust them. Knox, Garrett, Byrne, Hammond, they're clean. Don't talk. Save your strength. No time. Declan grabbed Silas's jacket, pulled him close. You're Ezra Sullivan, son of David Sullivan, son of Margaret Sullivan. Don't let them take that from you again. You hear me? Don't let them win. Declan and Prez, a weak smile. It's been an honor, riding with you. His hand went slack. Silas felt something inside him break, not shatter, worse. It went cold, frozen, the part of him that felt mercy, that felt compassion. It died with Declan O'Sullivan. What remained was something else entirely. Something forged in the desert of Iraq, in the fire of a psychiatric hospital 40 years ago, in the lies that had shaped his entire existence. What remained was a weapon. Maggie appeared at his side, tears streaming down her face. Silas, we have to go. Please. He stood slowly, looked down at Declan's body, at the man who'd been more than a brother, who'd been a friend, a mentor, family. Get to the garage, Silas said. His voice had changed, colder, harder. There's a motorcycle there. Ezra's Sportster. Take it, head north. Don't stop until you reach Flagstaff. Find a motel, pay cash. Wait for me. What are you going to do? He looked at her, and Maggie saw it then. The boy she'd raised, the man he'd become, and something new, something terrifying, vengeance. I'm going to end this. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Silas heard voices, his brothers, the real ones, calling for him. He stepped over Declan's body, walked to the door, kicked it open. 4 of his brothers stood there. Knox, Garrett, Byrne, Hammond, all wounded, all bloody, but alive. Behind them, 6 bodies, the shooters, all dead. But off to the side, Silas saw something that made his blood freeze. 3 more bodies, his brothers, the other half of the chapter. The ones on Carver's payroll, shot in the back. Knox stepped forward, blood running from a gash on his forehead. They turned on us, Prez, soon as the shooting started. Tried to take us from behind. We had to. Silas understood. The civil war he'd feared had just happened, and it was over in seconds. Declan? Garrett asked. Silas shook his head. Knox swore, punched the wall. Those bastards, those goddamn bastards. It's not over, Silas said. Carver sent them, which means he knows who I am, what I might remember. Byrne, the youngest of them at 42, spoke up. Then we hit him back, hard. We know where his office is, where he lives. We burn it all down. No, Silas's voice cut through the rage. Not yet. We do this smart. We find out what he's hiding, why he needs me dead, and then we destroy him. Completely. Hammond nodded. What do you need, Prez? Time and information. Can you boys hold down the fort? Keep anyone else from coming at our Mrs. Sullivan. With our lives. Silas looked at each of them. These men who'd just killed their own brothers to protect him, who'd chosen loyalty over everything else. This isn't your fight, he said. Knox stepped forward, grabbed Silas's shoulder. Brother, the second they came after you, it became our fight. We ride together. We die together. That's the code. The code is broken. The chapter is compromised. Then we build a new one, a clean one. But we do it after we put Carver in the ground. Silas wanted to argue, wanted to tell them to walk away, to save themselves. But he knew better. These were Hell's Angels, real ones. The kind who didn't run, didn't hide, didn't abandon their brothers. All right, Silas said, here's what we do. They gathered close, and in the ruins of the Sunset Diner, surrounded by bodies and blood and broken glass, Silas Mackenzie, Ezra Sullivan began to plan. Not an attack, a reckoning. Maggie watched from the kitchen doorway, watched her son, because that's what he was now, whether he fully accepted it or not, transform into something she'd never seen before. A leader, a warrior, a man who would burn the world down to protect the people he loved. She slipped away quietly, found the garage, found the Sportster exactly where she'd left it 40 years ago, covered in dust, but maintained, oil changed every year, tires rotated, battery replaced, because she'd always known, someday, somehow, her son would come home. She kick-started the engine. It roared to life, perfect, beautiful. She rode into the night, heading north, trusting that Silas would follow, trusting that after 40 years of waiting, she wouldn't lose him again. Back at the diner, Silas made a phone call, a number he'd memorized years ago but never used. FBI, Phoenix Field Office. I need to speak to whoever's handling the Carver Mining Corporation investigation. A pause, a schwaz. There is no active investigation into Carver Mining. Then there should be, because I have evidence of murder, conspiracy, human trafficking, and corruption going back 40 years. Another pause, longer this time. Who is this? My name is Ezra Sullivan, son of Officer David Sullivan, and I'm about to blow your case wide open. The voice on the other end changed, became sharp, focused. Stay where you are. Agent Garrett Walsh is en route. Tell him to hurry, because people are dying, and I'm not planning to wait much longer. Silas hung up, looked at his brothers. FBI's coming. You boys should clear out. I'll handle this. Knox shook his head. Not happening, Prez. We stay. They'll arrest you, all of you. Weapons charges, murder. Self-defense or not, you'll be tied up in court for months. Then we get good lawyers. Silas smiled despite everything, despite the death, the blood, the horror. These were his brothers, not by blood, but by choice. And that counted for something. 20 minutes later, federal vehicles rolled up. 8 of them, agents in tactical gear, poured out. Leading them was a man in his 50s, tall gray hair, hard eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. Agent Garrett Walsh. He surveyed the carnage, the bodies, the blood, the shattered diner. Then he looked at Silas. You Ezra Sullivan. Used to be, now I'm Silas Mackenzie. Take your pick. How about you start by telling me what the hell happened here? Silas did. All of it. The photograph, the memories, Declan's investigation, the attack, everything. Walsh listened, didn't interrupt, didn't take notes, just listened. When Silas finished, Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Then I've been investigating Vincent Carver for 4 years. Money laundering, tax evasion, bribery. Can't make anything stick. He's too smart, too connected. But human trafficking murder. If what you're saying is true, it's true. Then I need proof, real proof, not just your word. I'll get you proof. How? Silas smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made grown men take a step back. By making Carver think he's won. By walking right into his trap and then burning it down around him. Walsh studied him. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's the only way to get what you need. Carver's not stupid. He won't incriminate himself unless he thinks he's safe, unless he thinks I'm neutralized. And how do you plan to make him think that you arrest me, right here, right now, charge me with murder? Make it public. Make sure Carver sees it. He'll think he's in the clear. That's when he'll get sloppy. Walsh frowned. And then what? Then you wire me up, let me out, and I go have a conversation with Vincent Carver. Get him to confess everything on tape. That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard. You got a better one? Walsh didn't answer, because he didn't. I'm running out of time, Agent Walsh. My mother is out there somewhere, alone, scared, and Carver knows she's the only person who can verify who I am. He'll go after her. It's just a matter of when. We can protect her. Can you? You couldn't protect Isabella Martinez. You couldn't protect my father. You've been investigating Carver for 4 years and gotten nowhere. So forgive me if I don't trust the federal government to keep my mother alive. Walsh's jaw tightened, but he nodded, because Silas was right. Okay, we do it your way, but you're wearing a wire, and you're not going in alone. We'll have agents positioned nearby. Anything goes wrong, we move in. Fine. And Sullivan Mackenzie, whoever the hell you are. Yeah, don't do anything stupid. Silas thought about Declan, about his father, about 40 years of lies and stolen memories. Too late for that. Walsh arrested him, made a show of it. Handcuffs, perp walk, cameras flashing. The headline would read, Hell's Angels President Arrested in Diner Massacre. Carver would see it, would believe it, would relax. And that's when Silas would strike. They took him to the federal building, put him in an interview room, left him alone for 2 hours. When Walsh came back, he had a wire, state-of-the-art, invisible, undetectable. You know how to use this. I was EOD'd in Desert Storm. I can handle a wire. Walsh helped him put it on, checked it, double-checked it. You're clear. We'll be listening. We'll be close. But Sullivan, if he admits to killing Isabella Martinez, if he tells you where the body is buried, you get out immediately. You understand, don't try to be a hero. I'm not a hero, Agent Walsh. I'm just a man looking for answers. Answers can get you killed. So can lies, and I've been living with those for 40 years. They released him at midnight. No charges filed. Officially, he was a witness. Unofficially, he was bait. Knox and the brothers were waiting outside. What's the play, Prez? I'm going to see Carver, alone. Like hell you are. I have to. It's the only way. Knox grabbed his arm. Brother, you walk in there alone, you're not walking back out. Maybe, but it's a risk I have to take. Why? Silas looked at him. At this man who'd killed his own brothers to protect him. Who'd stood by him through everything. Because she's my mother, and I've already lost her once. I'm not losing her again. Knox held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded, released his arm. Then we follow. Far enough back that Carver won't see us. Close enough to help when you need it. FBI said, I don't give a damn what the FBI said. You're our brother. We protect our own. Silas felt something warm spread through his chest. Gratitude, loyalty, family. All right, but if this goes south, you get out, you take Mrs. Sullivan, you run. You don't look back. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. They rode through the night, 5 Harleys, engines roaring, heading toward the one place Silas swore he'd never go. The Carver estate, 20 acres on the outskirts of Phoenix, mansion, guards, walls, everything a man with something to hide would need. Silas rode up to the gate alone, The others hung back, watching, waiting. He pressed the intercom button. Yes, a voice. Suspicious. Tell Mr. Carver that Ezra Sullivan is here to see him. A long pause. Then the gates opened. Silas rode through. The mansion loomed ahead, lights blazing in every window. He parked the Harley, dismounted, walked to the front door. It opened before he could knock. Vincent Carver stood there, smiling, like welcoming an old friend. Ezra, or should I say Silas, I wasn't sure you'd come. We need to talk. Indeed we do. Please, come in. Silas stepped inside, the door closed behind him, and in that moment he knew. This was a trap, but it was too late to turn back. The war had begun, and only one of them was walking out alive. Agent Walsh sat in the surveillance van 3 blocks away, listening, watching, waiting. The wire crackled to life. Carver's voice, "Can I offer you a drink?" Silas's voice, "No thanks. This isn't a social call." "No, I suppose it isn't. You've caused me a great deal of trouble, Ezra. Killed my men, survived my trap. Very impressive. I want answers about my father, about Isabella Martinez, about what you did to me." A pause, then Carver laughed. Cold, cruel. "What I did to you, oh Ezra, you have it all wrong. I didn't do anything to you." "Then who did?" "My father, Charles Carver. God rest his soul. He's the one who saw potential in you, saw a boy who could be molded, shaped, turned into something useful." "Useful how?" "That's the beautiful part. You still don't remember, do you?" Silas's voice went cold. "Remember what you did, what we made you do, before we erased your mind." Silence. Walsh leaned forward. This was it. The confession they needed. "You killed Isabella Martinez, Ezra. Not my father, not his men, you." The words hung in the air like poison. "You're lying." "Am I? We have video. Would you like to see it?" A rustling sound, a laptop opening. Then Silas's voice, barely a whisper. "Oh God. You were drugged, of course. Experimental compounds. Made you suggestible, compliant. My father told you to kill her, and you did. Strangled her with your own hands. You were 18 years old, and you murdered a 7-year-old girl." Walsh's blood ran cold, because if it was true, if Silas really had killed Isabella Martinez, then everything changed. On the wire, Silas's breathing had become ragged, panicked. "No, I wouldn't. I couldn't. But you did, and we have proof, which means, Ezra, you belong to us. You always have, and you always will." "Where is she? Where's the body?" Carver laughed again. "Oh, that's the best part. She's buried right under your mother's precious diner. Has been for 40 years. Every cup of coffee she served, every pie she baked, all of it on top of a dead child's grave. Poetic, don't you think?" Walsh grabbed his radio. "Move in, now all units." But even as he gave the order, he knew they were too late. Inside the mansion, Silas stared at the laptop screen, at the grainy video, at the boy himself with dead eyes and shaking hands, at the small body going limp, and something inside him shattered. Not his resolve, his humanity. "You're wrong about one thing," Silas said quietly. "What's that?" "I don't belong to you. I never did." He grabbed the laptop, smashed it against Carver's head. The billionaire went down hard. Alarms blared. Guards rushed in. But Silas was already moving, already fighting, already killing. Because he wasn't Ezra Sullivan anymore. Wasn't Silas Mackenzie. He was something worse. He was a weapon with nothing left to lose. And God help anyone who stood in his way. The mansion erupted into chaos. Guards poured through doorways like ants from a kicked hill. 6 of them. 8. Too many to count. All armed, all trained, all expendable. Silas moved through them like smoke, like death wearing leather and fury. Every lesson from Desert Storm. Every instinct honed over 58 years of survival. All of it converging in this single moment. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to destroy. The first guard went down with a crushed windpipe. The second took Silas's elbow to the temple, dropped like a stone. The third managed to get his gun up, managed to pull the trigger. The bullet grazed Silas's shoulder. He didn't feel it, didn't care. He was beyond pain now. He grabbed the guard's weapon, turned it, fired 3 shots, 3 guards down. But more kept coming. Vincent Carver scrambled backward, blood running from his scalp where the laptop had split skin. His eyes were wide, not with fear, with rage. "Kill him! Kill him now!" Outside, Knox heard the gunfire, saw the guards mobilizing. "We're going in," he said. Garrett grabbed his arm. Wait for the FBI. Walsh said, Walsh isn't here. Our brother is, and he's dying in there. The four of them roared toward the mansion, Harley screaming. They crashed through the front gate, through the perfectly manicured lawn, right up to the front steps. They dismounted, weapons drawn, and kicked in the doors. What they found was carnage. 8 guards down, some unconscious, some not, and Silas, standing in the center of the room, bleeding, breathing hard, gun in hand, pointed directly at Vincent Carver's head. Prez, Knox shouted. Stand down, FBI's coming. Silas didn't move, didn't acknowledge them. His entire focus was on Carver. Tell me the truth, Silas said. His voice was hollow, empty. Did I kill her? Did I kill Isabella Martinez? Carver smiled through bloody teeth. You saw the video. Videos can be faked. Not that one. That one was real. You murdered a child, Ezra, and deep down you know it's true. You can feel it. Can't you? The guilt, the shame. It's why you have nightmares, why you can't remember. Your mind is protecting you from what you did. Silas's hand trembled, just slightly, but Knox saw it. Brother Peshte, Knox said quietly, don't do this. Put the gun down. Let the law handle it. The law, Silas laughed. It was the sound of something breaking. The law didn't protect my father. Didn't protect Isabella. Didn't protect me. The law is what let monsters like Carver run free for 40 years. Then let us be better than them. Let us prove the law can work. It's too late for that. Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. And that's when the front door exploded inward. FBI, tactical teams, 20 agents in full gear, weapons raised, red laser sights painting every surface. Agent Walsh strode in behind them. His face was grim. Sullivan dropped the weapon now. Silas didn't move. I said drop it. He killed her, Silas said, Isabella Martinez. He and his father. They took a 7-year-old girl and they murdered her. And then they made me think I did it. Made me carry that guilt for 40 years. We have the recording. We have his confession. We'll bring him to justice. But not like this. Not with you throwing your life away. My life was already thrown away 40 years ago when they erased who I was. Walsh stepped closer, slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Listen to me. We checked the video Carver showed you. Our tech team analyzed it while you were inside. It's a fake, deepfake technology, very sophisticated, but fake nonetheless. Silas's hand wavered. What? You didn't kill Isabella Martinez, Silas. You were drugged. You were there, but you didn't kill her. The coroner's report from 1984, the one that was buried, sealed. We found it. Isabella died from a drug overdose, sodium pentothal, given to her during the kidnapping. She was dead before you ever touched her. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. But the video, I saw myself. You saw what Carver wanted you to see. What his father created to control you, to break you. But it's not real. You're innocent, Silas. You always were. The gun dropped from Silas's hand, clattered to the floor. His knees followed. He collapsed. Not from injury, from relief. From the weight of 40 years of guilt that wasn't his lifting all at once. Knox rushed forward, caught him before he hit the ground. I got you, brother. I got you. Silas looked up, tears streaming down his face. I didn't kill her. No, you didn't. I didn't kill her. That's right. You're a good man, Prez. Always have been. Federal agents moved in, grabbed Vincent Carver, cuffed him, read him his rights. Carver smiled even as they hauled him to his feet. You think this is over? He looked at Silas. You think you won? My father built an empire on that girl's death, made billions. You really think one arrest is going to bring it all down? Walsh stepped forward. Your father's dead. His empire is gone. And yet you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, wondering if it was all worth it. It was because I broke him. Carver nodded towards Silas. Look at him, destroyed, even knowing he's innocent. The doubt will eat him alive. Every night, every dream, he'll wonder, and that wondering will kill him slower than any bullet. Walsh hit him, one clean punch to the jaw. Carver went down. Oops, Walsh said, slipped. They dragged Carver away, and as the mansion emptied, only Silas and his brothers remained. Burns spoke first. What now, Prez? Good question. What now? Silas had spent 40 years not knowing who he was. And now that he knew, now that the truth was out, what was he supposed to do with it? Now, he said slowly, Now I find my mother. Maggie had made it to Flagstaff, checked into a motel under a fake name, paid how, locked herself in room 17 and waited. Hours passed, no word, no call, no Silas. She paced, prayed, tried not to think about what might have happened, about losing her son again, this time permanently. The knock on the door came at 3 in the morning. Maggie froze, reached for the shotgun she'd brought from the diner, approached the door. Who is it? It's me, Mom. She threw the door open. Silas stood there, covered in blood, exhausted, but alive. Maggie pulled him inside, shut the door, locked it. Are you hurt? Let me see. Let me. I'm fine. Most of this isn't mine. What happened? Silas told her. Everything, the confrontation, the video, the truth. When he finished, Maggie was crying, not from sadness, from relief. I knew, she whispered. I knew you couldn't have done it. You were a good boy, a good man. They tried to make you think otherwise, but I knew. How could you know? Because I'm your mother, and a mother always knows. Silas pulled her into his arms, held her. For the first time in 40 years, Ezra Sullivan hugged his mother. And for the first time in 40 years, Margaret Sullivan held her son. They stayed like that for a long time, neither wanting to let go, neither willing to risk losing this moment. Finally, Maggie pulled back, looked up at him. What happens now? Now we go home. Home, the diner. We rebuild it, together. But Carver said, Isabella's body, it's buried there under the foundation. Then we'll find her, give her back to her family, give them closure, and then we start over. Clean slate, no more lies, no more secrets. Maggie nodded. And you, are you Silas or Ezra? He thought about it, really thought about it. I'm both. Ezra is who I was, Silas is who I became. I don't want to lose either one. Then don't. Keep both names, both lives. Be the man you were meant to be. I don't know who that is. Then we'll figure it out, together. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the desert sky in shades of gold and crimson. A new day, a new beginning. But first there was work to do. 6 months later, the Sunset Diner rose from its ashes. Bigger, better. Rebuilt by Hell's Angels and community volunteers and people who believed in second chances. The foundation had been excavated. Isabella Martinez's remains had been found, exactly where Carver said they would be. DNA confirmed her identity. Senator Rafael Martinez, now 76 years old, had come to claim his daughter, had stood in the ruins of the diner and wept for the child he'd lost, for the 40 years of not knowing. Silas had stood beside him. 2 fathers, 2 losses, 2 men who understood that some wounds never fully heal. Thank you, Martinez had said, for bringing her home. I'm sorry it took so long. You were a victim too. My daughter, your father, you, all victims of the same monsters. But now they're gone, and we can finally rest. The funeral had been small, private, just family and a few close friends. Silas and Maggie had attended, had laid flowers on the grave, had promised to never forget. Now standing in the newly rebuilt diner, Silas looked around at what they'd created. The counter where Maggie had served coffee for 42 years. Restored. The booths where travelers had rested. Rebuilt. The kitchen where apple pies had been baked. Modernized but maintaining the old charm. And above the door a new sign. Sullivan's Homecoming Diner, where lost souls find family. The grand opening was today. People from all over had come. Some out of curiosity, some out of support. Some because they'd heard the story and wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. Knox stood behind the counter pouring coffee. He'd taken a job as manager. Said the road life was getting old. Said he wanted roots. Garrett and Byrne worked the kitchen. Hammond greeted customers at the door. The Hells Angels Phoenix chapter had been officially disbanded. Too much corruption, too many lies. But in its place, something new had been born. Sullivan's Phoenix, a new chapter. Clean, legitimate, dedicated to helping veterans, finding missing persons, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Maggie moved through the diner with a grace that defied her 79 years. Smiling, laughing, hugging people she hadn't seen in decades. She was home, finally, and so was her son. Silas stood at the window, the same window Ezra had stood at 40 years ago, looking out at Highway 89, watching the cars pass. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Turned. Agent Walsh stood there, out of uniform, civilian clothes. Didn't expect to see you here, Silas said. Wouldn't miss it. Besides, I have news. What kind? The kind you'll want to hear. We excavated the rest of the Carver properties, found evidence of 12 more victims, going back 50 years. Charles Carver wasn't just a criminal, he was a serial killer. Used his mining operations to dispose of bodies. And Vincent knew, helped him, covered it up. Jesus. Yeah, but because you came forward, we were able to close 12 cold cases. Give 12 families closure. That means something. Silas nodded. What about Carver Vincent? Trial starts next month. He's facing 3 consecutive life sentences. Won't see daylight again. Good, Walsh paused. Then there's something else. We found records about the psychiatric hospital, about the experimental drug program they were running. Turns out it wasn't just you. There were others, kids who disappeared, who were given new identities, turned into assets for various criminal organizations. Silas felt his blood run cold. How many? We don't know yet, but we're looking. And we're going to find them, bring them home, just like you came home. I want to help. I was hoping you'd say that. We could use someone with your unique perspective. I'm not a Fed. No, but you're a survivor. And sometimes that's worth more than any badge. They shook hands. An understanding passed between them. This wasn't over. The fight wasn't finished. But for today, for this moment, it was enough to celebrate the small victories. Walsh left, and Silas returned to the window. A car pulled up. Old, beat up, barely running. A young man got out, maybe 25. Thin, nervous. He looked at the diner like it might disappear if he blinked. He walked to the door, hesitated, then pushed it open. Silas watched him, saw the way he moved, careful, uncertain, like a man who'd been hurt and didn't trust the world not to hurt him again. The young man approached the counter. Maggie smiled at him. Welcome to Sullivan's. What can I get you, hun? I'm not sure. I saw the sign about lost souls finding family. Is that real or just a saying? Maggie's smile softened. It's real. Come on, sit down. Let me get you some coffee. And pie. You look like you could use some pie. I don't have much money. Didn't ask for money. Asked if you wanted pie. The young man's eyes filled with tears. He nodded. Sat down. Maggie brought him apple pie, extra cinnamon, and coffee. Black. Silas walked over, sat down beside the young man. I'm Silas. What's your name? David. David Martinez, Jr. Silas went still. Martinez. Yeah, my grandfather was Senator Rafael Martinez, my aunt. She was Isabella, the girl who was killed 40 years ago. I know, I helped find her, helped bring her home. David looked at him, really looked. You're him, Ezra Sullivan, the one in the news, the one who brought down the Carvers. That's me. I came here because I wanted to thank you. My grandfather, before he died last month, he told me to find you, said you gave him peace. Let him finally rest. I wanted to tell you that meant everything to our family. Silas felt his throat tighten. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. But that's not the only reason I came. I want to learn what you do, finding people, helping them. I want to be part of that. Why? Because my whole life I grew up under the shadow of my aunt's death. My family was broken, destroyed by not knowing. And you gave us answers, gave us closure. I want to do that for other families. I want to help. Silas looked at Maggie. She nodded, smiled. He looked at Knox, at Garrett, at Byrne and Hammond, his brothers, his family. They nodded too. All right, Silas said, but it's not easy work. It's dangerous, painful. You'll see things that'll haunt you. Meet people who will break your heart. And some cases you'll never solve. Never get closure. I know, but I still want to try. Then welcome to the family, David. They shook hands. And in that moment, Silas understood something fundamental. This was his purpose, not writing, not fighting, not running from a past he couldn't remember, but helping others find what he'd found. Home, family, truth. The diner filled up. People came and went. Stories were told. Laughter echoed off the walls. And as the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Silas stood outside with his mother. You did good, son, Maggie said. Your father would be proud. I wish I could remember him. You do, in the ways that matter, in the man you became, in the choices you make. He's there, in your heart. Silas put his arm around her shoulders. I spent 40 years not knowing who I was, where I came from, what I was supposed to do with my life, and now. Now I know I'm your son, I'm a brother, I'm a survivor, and I'm home. Yes, you are. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the highway, watching the travelers pass. Some stopped, some kept going, but all of them had a choice, to stay lost or to find their way home. Inside the diner, Knox called out, "Hey, Prez, we got a situation." Silas turned. "What kind of situation?" "The good kind. We just got 3 calls, 3 separate missing persons cases. Families looking for help. Looks like word's getting around about what we do." Silas looked at Maggie. She smiled. "Go on. They need you." "You sure?" "I've had you to myself for 6 months. Time to share you with the world. But you come back for Sunday dinner. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." He kissed her forehead, walked back inside, sat down with David and his brothers. "All right, let's hear it. Who needs help?" Knox laid out 3 files, 3 faces, 3 stories of people who'd vanished, who'd been forgotten by everyone except the families who loved them. "Which one do we take first?" Garrett asked. Silas looked at each file, studied each face, felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Not a burden, a purpose. "All 3," he said. "We take all 3. We don't stop until we bring them home, every single one." "That's a lot of work, Prez. Then we'd better get started." They bent over the files, planning, strategizing, doing what they did best, finding the lost, bringing them home. And outside, the sign above the diner glowed in the darkness. Sullivan's Homecoming Diner, where lost souls find family. It wasn't just a saying, it was a promise, one that Silas Ezra Sullivan intended to keep for the rest of his life. 2 years later, on a Sunday morning, Silas stood in the garage behind the diner, working on the Sportster, the bike that had belonged to Ezra Sullivan 42 years ago. He'd restored it, completely. New engine, new paint, but keeping the original frame, the original soul, because some things were worth preserving, worth honoring. Behind him, footsteps. He turned. Maggie stood there, now 81, moving slower, but still strong, still fierce. "Breakfast is ready," she said. "I'll be right there." She walked over, ran her hand over the bike's seat. "He loved this bike. Used to spend hours out here, tinkering, dreaming." "I know, I remember." And he did. The memories had come back slowly, over months, over years. Not all of them, maybe not even most of them, but enough. Enough to know who Ezra Sullivan had been, who he dreamed of becoming. "You ever regret it?" Maggie asked. "Coming back, learning the truth. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." Silas thought about it, about 40 years of not knowing, of living a lie, of being someone else's weapon. "No," he said, "I don't regret it, because even if the truth hurt, even if it was hard, it was mine, and that's worth everything." Maggie nodded, squeezed his hand. "Come on, David's waiting," and Knox made his famous pancakes. "They're terrible, but don't tell him that." Silas laughed, followed her inside. The diner was full, not with customers, with family. Knox and his new wife, a former Marine named Sarah, Garrett and his 3 kids, Bern and Hammond, David Martinez Jr., who'd become like a son to both Silas and Maggie, and others, people they'd helped over the years, people who'd found their way home and decided to stay. They gathered around the table, said grace, ate terrible pancakes and perfect apple pie. And for the first time in 40 years, Ezra Sullivan, Silas Mackenzie, whatever name he chose to use, felt complete. Not because he'd found all the answers, but because he'd found what mattered most. Home, family, purpose. After breakfast, Silas walked outside, stood at that window, the one he'd stood at as a boy, the one he'd stood at as a stranger, the one he now stood at as a man who finally knew himself. Highway 89 stretched out before him, endless, infinite, full of possibility. Somewhere out there, someone was lost, someone was searching, someone needed help, and Silas would find them. Because that's what he did now. That's who he was. Not Reaper, not the president of a motorcycle club, not a weapon, not a victim. He was a son who'd come home, a brother who protected his own, a man who'd survived hell and chosen mercy over vengeance. He was Ezra Silas Sullivan, and he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Behind him, Maggie's voice, soft, warm. "You coming back in? David wants to show you something." Silas turned, smiled. "Yeah, Mom, I'm coming." He took one last look at the highway, at the endless road, at all the lost souls out there waiting to be found. Then he walked back inside, to the family that had waited 40 years for him, to the home he'd finally found, to the life he'd always been meant to live. The door closed behind him, and the sign above glowed bright against the desert night. Sullivan's Homecoming Diner, where lost souls find family, where broken things are mended, where the lost find their way home. Always.